left.
Yeah, I'm here.
Anyways, guys, we are live. So welcome to
What's up,
this.
guys?
What's up? Welcome to another episode of Culture Minus Sanskar Unscripted, and we've got with us my old friend Falah Faisal, and he also goes by the name Musalman. What's up, Falah? How's it going, man?
I'm good. I'm good. It's just a green Diwali.
Green Diwali. It's not as green. I can hear the crackers in the background. What do
I
you mean?
mean,
Like,
Yeah,
do
that's
you
at
mean
my
like
end.
personally, it's a green Diwali.
personally? It's a green Diwali. That's has it? Okay,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna start with the religious jokes at like the very onset of this. So we will keep those for later. I was about to greet you the way I usually greet you, uh, the
With a
interfaith.
bomb
Uh,
blast.
no, that's how you greet me. Mine is usually so my every time like I think I talk to Falah, it's usually Jai Shri Allah, and it's
Yeah,
pretty intense.
Jai Shri Allah to you too.
Jai Shri Allah to you too.
Or Ramu Akbar, which is another
Ram,
phrase that I come
yeah,
up with.
Ramu Akbar.
Ramu Akbar.
Yeah, it's the coming together of the saffron and the green, and
So,
yeah. So obviously, Fala, like one of the things that everybody has sort of been intrigued with of late is one of the new sort of comics on the block. For all the people who sort of like to keep up with the pop culture and satire in this country, pretty much everybody I've spoken to, and even the business that I'm in deals a lot with pop culture. Everybody knows of Musalman, and a good variety and a good number of these people are also
mhm,
fans of Musalman, right? So first of all, kudos to you for creating that. Like I'm a big fan, obviously.
mhm,
Sandeep has been a big fan of it. I know that
mhm,
for we've discussed this
mhm,
multiple times, and like I know. Okay, for this for the people who are sort of listening to this for the first time, and obviously like know Falah for the first time and who've been following us. I have known Falah since my time at a major online entertainment company, the Viral Fever, where Falah was an was a writer and a director
Yeah, right.
and
Yeah.
right, yeah, and every once in a while Falah and I just would just sort of sneak out during lunch or during coffee breaks and discuss everything from Bill Maher to like a lot of writers and like
Mhm.
a lot of ideas that Falah had back in the day. And one of the things I had in my mind was, why the fuck does he not do any of this? Like, he's got these crazy ideas about I know once upon a time he told me about the story
No, but
of a superhero who actually gets his power from
yeah.
eating beef, right? Which was pretty crazy. I
Did
remember
I?
that.
I don't
Yeah, you
remember
fuck.
half my ideas. Dude.
Yeah, but it
I
was
don't remember half my ideas.
it was there. And then eventually Falah left TVF, and after a while I left TVF, and Falah left with like a bit of a bang. We'll come to that in a while. But
Mhm,
what I realized, what I obviously saw after that was Musalman comics and making, and sort of the idea that he had in his head sort of came to fruition,
mhm.
started seeing the light of the day. And since then, everybody from I think Anurag Kashyap to Chandrasekhar Azad,
Yeah.
everybody has retweeted, loved, one way or another, has like sort of like become a fan of the Musalman comics. So obviously the first question to you is, how did the idea come about, right? And like, how did it take shape?
So there's a stupid answer to do this, and there's an intellectual answer to do this.
uh,
So I
Usually
think
the
I'll go with
same.
the stupid answer first.
Yeah.
I'll go with the stupid answer first. So I had this. I used to do stand up for a very long time as well, and one of my friends from stand up was this guy called Amir, and he used to make this joke about how he looked like Muslim Clark Kent. And I was like, hey, it'd be fancy if there was a Muslim Superman. That was where the thought originated from. It was just this guy going, I look like Muslim Clark Kent. But like the deeper, more philosophical answer to this is the fact that like I think I was what 9 when 9/11 happened, like in 2001,
Yeah.
and since then, or even before that, all I've seen is Muslim characters being bad guys. Right, you're always the villain, the mole, the spy. Like never a hero sort of a character. Even
Hmm.
in fact, in our country, mostly the so-called Muslim actors, 90% of their films they're playing a Raj or a Rahul or a Prem. So there's no real Muslim representation in terms of like in storytelling.
Yeah.
So I was like, I just wanted a hero that I would have liked growing up, or like a hero that my nephew and niece can probably read and like seek inspiration from. So that was the deeper thought behind it. Yep.
And like
Nice.
and like what as from obviously the first few comics that I read with Musalman, right, they were actually satirical in nature, right? I mean, I
Mhm.
remember the first one that came out, one of the first ones that came out, unless I'm mistaken, was the one when he actually saves a woman, and the woman goes
Yeah.
thank you, and he was like, if you were wearing burqa and had covered yourself, I wouldn't have had to do this. And it's like a laugh out
Yeah.
loud sort of a thing.
Yeah.
From that, it has actually come to Musalman, uh, like almost becoming serious about his origins, and now you have actually introduced the part where he's being an ally to a lot of like to
Mhm.
obviously Azad, right? So
Yeah.
it's gone from like almost comical, which is definitely not Clark Kent, which is definitely not a Batman, which is definitely any of those
Yeah.
things. It's not a superhero material sort of. It's almost like a satirical thing. From there, you've actually gone to being almost quasi serious, if I may put it
It's
right.
also because my perspective on things has changed over time, right? Like at that point, like when I started Musalman, it was meant to be like a critique of the fundamental elements of Islam, like the people who like are okay with Sharia law and all this stuff. It was supposed to be a critique of Islam when it started, but I think over the last couple of years, I think right now Musalman to me is like something I'm putting out to defend the Muslims as opposed to critiquing it internally. Because even though whether I believe in it or not, like religion wise, I mean, I'm gonna be like treated the same way. Nobody's gonna stop and ask me whether I'm an atheist or an agnostic. My name and my circumcision is enough to land me in trouble. So, so like at the end of the day, like it started off being something which I wanted to use to critique the fundamental aspects of Islam, but has become something that I now think is a shield for the Muslim people.
Hmm. That's a
And why
smart.
is that?
Why is
Why
that?
is that?
Because, like to paraphrase them, I say Muslim khatre mein hai.
Which is actually like it's not wrong at all, right? It's like Musalman Khatre mein hai. That's literally the
Huh.
truth, right?
Because, like, I mean, this year we've seen a range of incidents happening, right? From the CA protests to the Delhi riots, if you want to call them riots and not a pogrom. There's been like consistently the country's gone on this like anti-Muslim sort of a thing. Dude, like ads are getting banned because like you see a Muslim mother-in-law and like a Hindu daughter-in-law, and somehow that's against the culture of the country.
Yeah,
Like,
and somebody said something very interesting. I don't know who the person is, otherwise I would have credited them, but they said that even if you had reversed the roles in that particular Tanishq ad, right, people
mhm.
would have still like had like a bit of a like meltdown, because if you had said that the girl was Muslim and the family was Hindu, and if they were doing the whole thing by Muslim rituals, then we would have
Yeah,
actually
obviously.
we would have lost it completely, right? Like
Yeah.
like there was
Yeah,
no way that ad was going to be
Mm.
acceptable, which is actually like a more fundamental thing, which is like, oh, so you just cannot see these two together in any format, right? So is nothing
yeah.
innocent anymore, is nothing like sort of pure anymore, right? And which is pretty fucked up.
But that's a journey we as a country have taken, because like right now, even like there was another Surf Excel ad that got banned because like it's like holy time and this Muslim boy wants to go to the mosque and this girl comes on a cycle, protects him, takes him to the mosque, and that was also like supposedly promoting love jihad and stuff.
Yeah, but
But
it's
like
fucked up,
this
right?
is not the
Because
country we grew up in, right? Like in the sense like where I grew up, at least in Bangalore, we lived in a gated community where it was Christian family, Hindu family, Muslim family living next to each other. On Eid we sent biryani. On like Christmas we got cake, and Diwali we all burst crackers together. It was fine by everybody, no matter what we did. This whole intolerance has been like a recent change, in my opinion. I mean, like it has been growing, but like it's never been this prominent.
so that's something I have been thinking about myself, and I've also been talking about this to Sandeep and some other friends of mine. I sort of disagree there, because I think that we have always been like this. It's just that
Hmm.
like the extremist idea, whatever it might be, sort of gets more like it sort of gets more hype these days. Like you can actually trend things right now, because just
Yeah.
because you can, you will go ahead and do it, and so it's more in your face. But the way I look at it, I don't think we were ever like a secular country or ever like we wanted to be there,
Or
but
maybe
we
I
were
was in a
never.
nice bubble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe I was in a nice bubble.
No, because we've always had those fight. Actually, like I read something very interesting. I know like all three of us in one way or another are fans of Joseph Campbell, right? And
Yeah.
there is a book by Joseph Campbell which actually which is almost like a travelogue of Campbell from India, Sri Lanka, and a bit of Japan. And this is
Mm-hmm.
him coming to India in 1948, 1 year, almost less than 1 year after independence, right? Like that's how old Campbell is, which
Mm-hmm.
is like crazy. However, his book starts with him landing in Delhi and talking about him making a trip to the Indian Parliament and seeing a bunch of sadhus over there surrounding the parliament, almost like holding it ransom because they were from the cow protection community. They were the Gaurakshaks. And it
Yeah.
really stunned me. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, so Gaurakshaks are not really a new thing. Like, I mean, we obviously think
I
because
mean,
of lack of education or lack of curiosity towards the culture, but these things have been around for like a long time. This is that now these voices start trending or they become a part of
that technically was the first terrorist attack on Parliament, by the way.
yeah.
That was the first terrorist attack on Parliament, which happened with lathis and like whatnot.
So you do
And
know this story.
I have heard of it. I'm not sure of the timeline, but I read it somewhere on Scroll or something about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So it came to me like from that source which had nothing to do with understanding the right wing or the left wing or intolerance in India. Like Campbell was just interested in the culture in general, and he was like, oh, so there are so many Gorakshaks, and India has like this as like they almost consider it as a protected class. So when I read that, and when I read other stories like even about say Ayodhya, or even if you sort of go back, Bombay actually witnessed Hindu Muslim riots in the 1890s. In fact, there is a
Mm-hmm.
Jorge Luis Borges short story which writes about the Bombay Hindu Muslim riots. So I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's as old as time. So I just don't think, man, that like we were ever secular. We had secular leaders who sort of
Yeah.
agreed upon like a basic decency, like on an idea of basic decency towards all religions. However, that shield has sort of now been broken, and obviously because of technology, a lot of it has been aggravated. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, we all sort of grew up in a nice little bubble, and eventually that bubble is now bursting.
Yeah. That bubble's now bursting.
Yeah, yeah,
It burst in like 2012, 2013ish.
yeah,
It's like
yeah.
like we are seeing the repercussions of it. Like even another writer I really look up to is Alan Moore, right?
Who?
And Alan Moore,
Oh,
who
yeah,
wrote V for Vendetta,
yeah,
Watchmen, and stuff.
yeah.
So he postulates that the world that we lived in ended in about 2017, like 2016, 2017. The world we lived in was over, and now we are in genuinely a new world. And the reason he says that is because like he takes time, right? Like for example, if you take year zero as a starting point, for the information that existed then to double, it would have taken about 1,600 years. Then for that information to double, it took maybe 200 years, and then 50 years, and then 20 years, then a few months. But right at this point, like information is doubling in a matter of seconds. With every photo that we upload, every tweet that we send out, every interaction we have on social media, or whatever. Information is doubling at like every fraction of a second. So we are genuinely living in an age where there's too much information as such. Like,
There's
And
amplification all around as well. It's crazy.
yeah.
so what about, like, I'm trying to think, right? What does it imply? Does it mean that whatever the kind of person that you are, you will be able to find your tribe very easily?
Yeah.
And what you might have thought is not that cool like 30-40 years ago, when there wasn't as much technology, as much amplification, uh now that just gets amplified, and everybody thinks that they are in the majority, right? So, and it obviously everybody thinks that they have somebody who will lend an ear to them, and that is actually a very good thing in a lot of ways, right? Like, I mean, if you look at the LGBTQ community, if you look at people who are into a particular form of comics, a particular form of music, right? They sort of connect with the others that
Yeah,
they
my
want to.
comic would not have its reach. Like my comic would not be what it is if it wasn't for the easy access of social media. For example, like earlier, if you wanted a comic, you'd have to go to a comic book store, find it, pay money for it. Right now, my comic gets delivered in the pockets of every human being. It's up to them whether they want to find it or not. But anybody who has Instagram gets my comic in their pockets, which wouldn't otherwise
Yeah,
be happening.
precisely, and that's what I'm saying. So it's like mostly a good thing, but then the same tool is obviously used by the recruiters and the Rakshaks and what have you, and so they sort of, it obviously takes an ugly form, and that extremism sort of and the thing is like like there are Gorakshaks and there are like uh, they're not just Gorakshaks, there are like obviously extreme right-wing people who actually want like a dictatorship, a fascist dictatorship, and all sorts of people who get to unite, and they just don't belong to one party. Like they're all over the country, they're scattered all over the country, which and they actually come from all sorts of political parties, so to speak, which
So
also
the reason for the reason for that is that they have a unifying vision, man. Like because like so I was reading this writer called Sergej Popovich who brought about the Serbian Revolution, and he says what any movement needs is a vision of tomorrow, whereas Hindu Rashtra is a very powerful vision of tomorrow. On the other side, there's like we do not have common ground to stand on, let alone have a vision. So like it's almost like it's not even a fair fight any in that matter because like people like where like I think even when Umar Khalid was arrested and people were posting about that, people were like, oh, why are you posting about this guy and not posting about this person who was also arrested?
yeah.
I'm like, what is this divide and rule logic on yourself? Like, why are you dividing yourself and the others? That's the other side's job.
I also saw that happen.
So
I saw the exact same thing happen when Prashant Bhushan was arrested, right? And he said, "I'm not going to pay you like a fine," right?
fine basically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and people went
Yeah.
batshit crazy. Like, why is like I don't know what the nest is. Like a very stupid narrative that these people have created. Like a lot of people
They're like, oh, he's
on the
Brahmin. That's why he
yeah, he's
gets
like an
away with
upper caste
what he's done.
liberal Brahmin. Why the fuck are you doing it? And I'm
Yeah.
like, what does it matter? If you're gonna win something, you
Exactly.
fucking just stand with the guy. And matlab,
And
it's like
here's yeah, sorry. Here's another thing that Popovich talks about, right? Is like knowing when to declare victory. Like when you find that you've had a victory, you declare victory and you move ahead. Whereas with, for example, the Bhushan case is a victory, but our side is like so used to losing that they're looking for loss in a victory. That's what keeps happening. Like
also when you say our side, you mean the anti BJP side, or you mean the left, or you mean the liberal? Like, and I'm actually like dividing.
anybody who's not Hindutva, yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Like and even Hindutva also, right? I have a problem with the phrase. Okay, I don't think it's supposed to be called Hindutva. I think it's Abrahamic Hinduism because what they've done is like Hindu religion or whatever like existed for centuries was not monotheistic, but this whole like importance given to Ram and stuff like that is basically shaping Hinduism into a monotheistic way in a model that they've seen Jews, Christians, and Islam work across the world. So I think it's Abrahamic Hinduism and not Hindutva.
I wrote a piece about that a while ago. It was called "How to Kill a Religion," and it was on the exact same lines that if you want to sort of make a religion super vulnerable to anything, any external force, you have to sort of centralize it, because then what happens is that you like the moment somebody attacks the central premise of that religion, the whole thing breaks down. But if you have more of like a hydra sort of religion, which is like completely decentralized, which is what Hinduism has been with all its multiple schools of thought, you can just attack one school and the whole religion sort of stays intact. And
Or it just morphs into something else that can, you know, swallow whole whatever it is attacking it in
yeah,
the first place,
absolutely.
and syncretize it to an extent where you can just say that in Hinduism anything goes.
Yeah.
I mean,
What the
that's
fuck happened to Falah?
decentralization is actually the. Is he there?
He just dropped out.
Oh, must be like a internet connection problem.
Yeah, dude, it's
Discom in Bangalore is I don't know where he lives, but I'm sure the notorious man.
dude, he lives in like a fantastic place. I went to his house, and it's one of those nice posh places with like a beautiful. There he is back again. But it's a beautiful place where he lives, huh? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna give
Where
up
is
his.
it?
I.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, sure.
But it was pretty intense.
Sorry, that was a power cut.
See, I told
Yeah,
you.
and I was
Discom
just
acting up
telling
again.
Sandeep that you live in a lovely place, but
Let's take
The
for
lovely
30
places in
seconds.
Bangalore are the ones that suffer the most, actually.
Um,
Ironically, the posher
I
the
mean, take
locality in
30
Bangalore, the
seconds for
worse.
the power to go off and come back on.
Yeah. So what I was saying was that what you're saying absolutely makes sense. Like, when you sort of have an Abrahamic vision of a particular religion, what you're also saying is like it's a centralized vision of a particular religion, which means
Mhm,
if you attack certain tenets of that religion, you actually kill the religion completely, right? One of the reasons why
mhm,
the Catholic Church is so much under the fire all the time is because like the priests cannot stop themselves from sucking a dick, right? And I mean it's a thing, right? I mean, whether or not everybody does it is obviously no, of course not. But the moment you sort of get like a few
Large parts of it could be propaganda as well. Right?
large
Large
parts of it,
parts of it could be propaganda,
absolutely.
but
But
it works. It works against
it
the
works
narrative, like
against
you were saying.
Catholicism, right? That's what I'm
mhm.
saying.
Yeah,
So
it does.
mostly what has
Yeah.
happened, even in Islam, right? Like if somebody was to attack the core tenets of Islam, and which is what they do all the time, like it is obviously under fire from a lot of people because everybody sort of thinks that there is one particular idea, and if we attack this, if we completely dismantle this, in a way the whole religion comes under fire. What is that has not been the case with a lot of Hinduism, right? Because you had like multiple schools of thoughts and multiple sects and everything, and you could attack anything, and it would, as Sandeep was saying, transform into something else or become like, oh, this is just another way of Hinduism.
But like
Now,
Hindu as a word was not a thing until 200 years ago, right? When the British were doing a survey of India,
yeah,
whoever
yeah,
they could not classify as Muslim or Christian, and they go up to the person and ask, "Hey, so what do you worship?" And they're like, "We worship the tree or the mountain or that stone." Were just broadly categorized into the word Hindu. It's a 200-300-year-old word. I don't think it existed as they claim for the centuries that
yeah, dude. We
the way
had
it
like
is.
the first video that we did on Culture Man the Sanskar was a video about names
Yeah,
and how Hindu was not
yeah,
really a thing. I mean, it's like a corruption of multiple words eventually comes to Hindu. It
yeah.
started off with what, like
So, but
Sandeep?
It
when we are
was
talking about
the
Islam,
corruption
yeah,
of Indus actually
yeah.
kind of came over from the Greeks, and a lot of corruption over years.
The land beyond the
Indoi,
Indus.
Indus, yeah, the land beyond the Indus was Indoi, and
Mm-hmm,
ultimately it got morphed into whatever, for whatever reason, it got morphed into Hindu, the people across the
mm-hmm,
river, and the Britishers just took over, man, and they used it in a beautiful way actually to destabilize the entire cultural framework of the subcontinent. It's crazy.
mm-hmm.
The video essay is very close to our heart actually. It's done quite well
Yeah,
now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
Hindu is just a corruption. The name Hindu is a corruption, and the thing is, people don't realize that within Hinduism, the sectarianism is so strong, and that's one of the reasons why it is so powerful also. But the minute you bring it under, say, like you said, a monotheistic kind of an umbrella, then you're weakening it, and that is something that is worrying. I mean, in general, because what has worked in general for India also, with the dominant Hindu, whatever you want to call it, population, is the fact that in general, because it's intrinsically plural, right? And because it's intrinsically plural, it sort of works in general. It's one of those things.
yeah.
Am
Because
I
it's like,
audible?
yeah, you're absolutely
Yeah.
audible. It's one of those things, right? Like a even if you take like say the Brahmin cult, or not the Brahmin class rather. I mean, if you go to one part of the country, they are like pure vegetarians, but if you go to Bengal or if you go to South,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually these meat eating. So there is inherent plurality, and so Abrahamic Hinduism is actually like a fantastic way of encapsulating it.
Yeah.
Have you
In
used
a
it
way.
anywhere?
No, I don't think so. I mean, besides maybe like an Insta story or something, I don't think so.
You should actually get your name attached to it. I mean, in a way, so that
No, but
nobody
here's
can
the
take it from
thing.
you.
Okay, so I've been like looking at this year. Like I tried reading the Quran and I read the Bhagavad Gita and all of that stuff as well. Whereas, so here's the thing. Okay, with like when you say like attacking a tenet of the religion and stuff. So in Islamic prophecy, Quran being a book of prophecy, what it really says, like there's a bunch of places where it says that Allah has made the hearts of the non-believers hard-hearted, and you will be persecuted no matter what you do.
Yo, man, we keep losing you. Yo, Falah, what's up?
Yeah, that's what I got. I had a doubt whether I was audible because his screen had frozen back then as well.
Yeah, yeah, it's still frozen.
Maybe now what has happened is the current has come back and the Wi-Fi is taking time to look all. Oh
Ah,
man, first
jeez,
world
man.
problems in a third world country.
Yeah, dude. It's too
Which
funny.
is crazy. Today, did you see India in pixels? The
No.
latest post about First World, Second World
Yo,
Sorry
Power.
about
Falah.
the.
Fala's
Fallah's
Sorry,
back.
back, dude.
just the electricity happening. I think it's too much truth happening to the powers that we don't want this out there.
Yeah, dude. Like, yeah, it reminds me of that. Yeah, fuck it. I'm not gonna go there. But yeah, it's too much.
So,
Yeah. You were
so
reading
what I was
Quran and
saying is,
reading Gita.
yeah. So what it says in the Quran is that Allah has made the hearts of the people who are non-believers hard-hearted, and you will be persecuted no matter where you go, and that's part of the Islamic prophecy. So no wonder, right? Like no wonder it's where it is across the world, because part of the prophecy is that you will be persecuted no matter where you go. You will have to overcome it wherever you are and whatnot. So it's a core part of the belief is that you're going to be attacked. Like I don't like it just becomes self-fulfilling after the point, right?
Yeah, it does.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it actually does. Like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how it's interpreted though. Like, this is one of the things I've not heard about.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Can you find a reference for that and share it if possible?
I'll have to like search for it in the Quran that I have. But here's the thing: why it's not spoken about, right? Because like when this Macron made a statement saying like Islam is in crisis across the world, so many people DM'd me asking, "What do you think about the French president?" And I'm like, "Wait, why does my opinion so important all of a sudden?"
Dude,
But
you're a
what
fucking Musalman, bro. That's why
but
it's
what it
important.
really came down to, what I told most people is, man, my opinion will piss off both sides. Like that's where my opinion comes from. On one hand, I do know this bit, but the other hand, I do not agree with almost any white person criticism of Islam, because my criticism comes from knowledge of it. I've actually like learned, studied, and read this stuff. Whereas with the like a Macron or a Bill Maher or whoever criticizes Islam, or Sam Harris, is actually like criticizing it from a colonizer, white person, xenophobic mentality. I don't think like Vilmar is probably even touched the Quran or whatever. It's just
I'm
that
yeah.
outsider, like, hey, they're different, I hate them. That's the mentality of the most white criticism that comes.
It's
So
the
like,
mentality of maybe a big chunk of white people, but I'm not really sure if it's like, say, if you take up somebody like a Sam Harris, right?
mhm,
I mean, I don't expect him to be xenophobic in any form, or like Bill Maher is like, Bill Maher really likes to fuck with people, so I get that. But like,
yeah,
I totally understand. His idea is like, he told people that Stanley's death is no big deal, or something like that. Like, like grow the fuck up, and Marvel is just for kids and stuff. So I get that, and he's fun when he's
yeah,
fun, but sometimes he's just a comedian. However,
hmm
then the big question is, and for me, it's always been a question, and it's become a question only last 2 years, because I was always sure about this, that
hmm
is the person who is not a part of a particular culture not allowed to criticize it? Because that is a very, very scary place if we actually were to go there, right?
hmm
Because then you would say that nobody who's white, or nobody who's like, say, Arabic, or nobody who's from an indigenous land
no, no,
can criticize casteism also.
my point being, criticize with knowledge, not out of ignorance. For example, when I see a Macron or somebody make a statement, I feel that that is an ignorant statement. Like
Yeah.
that statement's born out of ignorance, not out of knowledge and education. I think you can criticize as long as you know what you're talking about. You've actually studied this enough to have a valid point. It's not just like, I don't know shit, but I still hate it. That's very like, that's where my problem lies.
Okay. Oh
The
yeah.
thing is, I can actually imagine a world where Sam Harris could be biased.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually imagine that world. You know why? Because indigenous writings and teachings and the interplay of language and the orientation of cultures, when they cross borders, right? Um, the translated field, right? It's open to so much misinterpretation.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary. For
Mm-hmm.
example, Arabic, having lived in Dubai, I know that Arabic is a very flowery language. And it's very similar to Sanskrit that way, in the sense that there's so much allegory, metaphor, and almost everything they talk about. And almost anything they always talk about is in reference to something already that has already taken place. Now, how do you capture that in, say, a language like English, or any other Western Romance
Mm-hmm.
language, right? Where a reference to context per se is something that is alien to them. Everything is as objective as can be. It's related to that particular space and time, whatever is being described. But when they come across a text like a Quran, which has so much reference to context, it's hyper textual already. Something that even the Westerners haven't been able to comprehend with the Bible, you know, because the Bible also is fundamentally a Middle Eastern text, even though it's not Arabic. It's, I think, Hebrew, right?
Latin, I
The
think
ancient.
originally,
No,
right?
Originally was Hebrew. The Old Testament was
Aramic.
Aramaic was the original dialect. So, how can you imagine a white person who has not been brought up in that cultural framework? Okay, he has no context. He might have read, he might have done all you care. It's ultimately one language doesn't really translate the entire learnings, the teachings, doesn't transport the place and time and the entire brevity of context in his head to understand what is being spoken. So, for example, if like Falah mentioned, right, he's if Lord Allah, whatever, has Allah has made the heart of the non-believer hardened, or He's hardened the heart of the non-believer. How do you know? How do you know how to interpret that? It comes across as something like I can actually feel threatened, but maybe I don't need to. I really don't understand that. Maybe he can also come from a space of compassion, wherein he talks that his word basically conveys love and compassion, and the non-believer is not able to take it in, and as a result, his heart is hardened. That is just one very obscure or random way of actually looking at it, but we don't really know unless you have studied Arabic in an Arab land and you literally just immersed yourself in the culture. Otherwise, as a white guy, you're sitting in the confines of like a studio. Who are you to even talk about this stuff? Like you don't know. You don't know. Like so like Falah says, I tend to agree with him because even Hinduism has been subjected to this kind of diatribe in the past, right? Like Orientalists like Max Muller and stuff like Aakash and I have discussed in the previous episode also of this podcast. They didn't understand what was actually being spoken of. Like tantric rites was something that they found extremely unappealing, and tantrism, especially in Buddhist cultures, is even more unappealing. If you actually go and read into that shit, it's extremely scary. But when you actually understand where they're coming from, it's extremely deep and symbolic. The meaning is extremely deep and symbolic. So misinterpretation is, I mean, it's something that you have to take it as a given, especially in this day and age, where, like you mentioned, information is amplified exponentially, and and when we say information, misinformation is also amplified exponentially, and that sort of feeds into that xenophobia, right, that you're talking about. So I can actually imagine Sam Harris being biased eventually.
I'm gonna
I
have
think
to
it's a
I'm
bias
gonna
approach.
shut the fuck up. I'm gonna have to stop both of you there because
We come
we're
back to
gonna
Sam
was
Harris.
running out.
we are coming back to Sam Harris. We are running out of time.
I was just going to ask, actually, this is like so grungy and dirty, right? It's like Aesop Rock going back to the basics, and he wants a production, dirty production, and it's just like that's the appeal. But yeah, I mean,
yeah,
it is what it
it's
is.
almost like running in an underground radio or something. Yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's like that for me. But yeah, so you were saying that Sam Harris can still have, but then okay, Sam Harris can still have biased ideas. What you guys think?
Like right now I'm reading Aldous Huxley's Island. The reason I bring it up is because he was talking about tantric Buddhism and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I'm reading Aldous Huxley's Island, and that delves into this subject as well. Like I was earlier reading Nationalism by Rabindranath Tagore, and what he says is that even though the so-called governors and the rulers of the Western world might seem apathetic towards us, the artists are the same, have the same heart. Like when you look at Huxley's interpretation or deep dive into Hinduism from his fiction, I totally really love that shit. Like, whether it's Brave New World or Island or wherever an artist is going from an artistic perspective, I can buy into that. Whereas like somebody who's like going into this like, hey, I need to control these people, govern them, yada yada yada. That's where I think this bias element comes in.
Yeah.
See, because
But the
Aldous Huxley is
artist,
inherently, sorry, Aldous Huxley is inherently
the
sympathetic.
artist,
He is in awe
yeah,
of the
exactly.
religion. He's not trying to understand it and, as a result, control it in some sense. He's not trying to judge it. So it's a very complex.
It's a
Because Sam Harris is a stud, right? He's an intellectual stud. But my only reason to kind of like question him, he hasn't is the reason that he hasn't devoted his life to Islamic studies. This is just one of the books that he's written
Exactly.
about. and I don't know what his motivations are.
and no, also the fact that all these books, Islam only came under the microscope in the last 20 odd years because they needed a
True.
new enemy, right? So
Yeah.
like what happened to the Judaism for over the last 100-200 years, that enemy was over. You could no longer target them. Then there was the Red Scare, and after like the fall of the USSR, didn't have the communist enemy. So it's just that we needed a new enemy for the 21st century. So
Do
if
you
that
think then, by that logic, do you think that Hinduism coming under that sort of scrutiny now is like a propagation of the cycle? Like, I have another point to make about this later, but I just want to hear what you guys have to think about this.
Mhm. Like I'm not sure because like it's only scrutiny here, right? I don't think it's under scrutiny in the rest of the world. Nobody's talking about Hinduism being a bad thing in the rest of the world.
I mean, like, okay, it started in a way, right? It's already started. Like, if you see the Western intellectuals in a way, like, I don't know why we should give them that much credit, but I guess that's the voice we have to deal with right now. But they have been talking about the rise of Hindu nationalism, right? Like, if New York Times covers it, that means it has some level of pull to it, right? So I do understand that there is definitely a growing suspicion of the dominant religion in this country. However, there is another very interesting point before dying. Obviously, Christopher Hitchens made. He's like, obviously, he came up with a book called God is Not Great, right? Which is the literal negation of Allahu Akbar. And he was asked, like, why do you do this? He's like, because if you were talking to me back in the 1920s and the 1930s, I would have actually conceded that Islam is a relatively peaceful religion in the world, and the main problem with the world right now is militant Catholicism, right? Because in many ways, it was also the church in many ways which aided the program against the Jews. There were and obviously from the time Christianity was sort of came into prominence. There was just like there's just one stanza or sort of paragraph, just one piece of literature, so to speak, which says that, and the Jews demanded the blood of Christ, right? And just based on that, they have had programs after programs after programs against the Jews, right? So if you were talking until the 30s and the 40s, yes, Christianity would have been like the most would have been like the big scare of the world. Then obviously, as you said, right, it was the communists, and then the big scare became Islam sometime in the mid 80s, right?
Also, so this is a change I've seen happen in my lifetime. Maybe the change there happened with, like, it's tied to the communist storyline, dude. Like with when Russia was getting into Afghanistan and stuff, the CIA set up the Mujahideen in order to fight them.
There's literally there is a paper cutting which says the freedom fighter lead like what some hero leads his people to on the road to peace, and underneath that is the image of Osama bin Laden. I don't know if you guys have seen this. Yeah.
So it's a manufactured villainy, right? So example, like in the like post 9/11, I've seen. So until that point, I thought my aunts and uncles were liberal and whatnot, right? But then all the uncles started growing beards. All the aunts got into burqas. They started saying Allah Hafiz instead of Khuda Hafiz. It was almost like we are global bad guys now. Let's put on our costumes. That's what it felt like, Like I actually asked them, why are you saying Allah Hafiz instead of Khuda Hafiz? And they were like, well, if you say Khuda Hafiz, you don't know which God you're referring to. So Allah Hafiz makes it special.
So tell me something though. Why is that? Why is that? Oh wow, what the fuck, dude?
Sorry, I just muted. I think I can't credit the big ones.
Yeah.
And
no,
it's sort of peppering the narrative. So.
But tell me something though. Why Allah Hafiz in a time when actually, if you were Muslim, say right after 9/11, would you not want to hide it rather than hype it?
No, I mean, like the moment you feel like, hey, we are being victimized, we must like own up to it. It's like one of those ghettoization beliefs, right? Like it's like you put pressure on something and you react to it by being more that way. Like it's the basic. I mean, like if somebody tells me not to do anything, I will go ahead and do it.
It's like don't burst crackers on Diwali, guys. Please don't spread air pollution. It's like fuck you, and like I'm getting.
मैं burst करेगा.
Huh.
It is part of my identity.
Yeah,
It's
why
like
don't you go
protectionism and
tell the Muslims?
entrenchment.
Huh.
Why don't you go tell the Muslims
Yeah.
not to cut bakras and all? Oh, animals are very scared of that
I
also.
mean,
I was,
so,
Yeah,
yeah, I get it. So it's exactly that.
yeah.
It's a
so I mean,
weird.
but did you really? I mean, this is a very interesting anecdote. Huh? So this transition, this clean shaven to bearded, I don't know,
Mhm.
to burqa,
Mhm.
them wearing burqas. When did this happen? Over what period of time, in your
I think
observation?
I think like post 9/11 is where I've really observed it, right? Like, my biggest
Post 9/11?
problem because of this is at weddings I lose track of how many times I say salam alaikum to the same person, because like all my aunts, cousins all look the same, wear the same thing. Just saying salam alaikum to the same person multiple times. Like,
Dude, I mean, I'm seeing a bit of ghettoization in my family. Like it's very it's pretty crystal clear, right? It's like I literally have a fufaji, and I'm pretty sure he's not gonna watch this. So he's actually grown a white beard, and he's actually started dressing himself up just like our honorable prime minister. And his WhatsApps, and I like actually literally have a family WhatsApp group where like 10-15 years ago nobody would have given a shit about like any supposed mental victory over Muslims in this country. But now, the moment the temple was made, it was almost like all these people, all these family members almost came out of hiding, and whom I never really assumed to be religious, right? And they're really happy about it. I actually have a dumb fuck of a I fuck it now. I've gone this far, might as well. I have a dumb fuck uncle who actually is a reporter, and he constantly has started talking about the Hindu pride. Dude, this dude used to freaking jerk off to all sorts of porn pretty much all his growing up, right? Like while he was growing up, and he suddenly become this guy who is all about preserving the pride and preserving the authenticity of the Hindu culture. And I'm like, how
but
does this shift happen, right?
that comes from insecurities, right? Like
Of
the
course it
fact
does.
that you're insecure about what your faith is or belief is when you act out to pretend to be proud or whatever. Because a deep-seated insecurity and like self-worthiness or whatever. I mean, why do like I think Doug Stanhope has like a great bit about nationalism and stuff. Where he talks
Oh
about
fuck, dude, that shit is unbelievable.
like nationalism only teaches you to take pride in others' actions and like feel better about shit that you have no actual like hand in doing.
Fuck, that's one of that's a piece that got me into Doug stand-up, right? Like there's this like two
Yeah.
guys who say like we helped France against Germany, and he's like, dude, did we though? Did we though? Like you and I were getting shit faced at McDonald's, and I know I black out every once in a while, but I did not see any missed calls from French when I woke up this morning. So did we actually go and do this? And it was like such a fucking brilliant piece, man. So yeah, I mean that's one of the things. I mean I've had this conversation with a lot of people in my family and extended family, and some of the friends that I have who actually are Brahmins, right? And they're like,
Mhm.
oh, you have to take some pride in being a Brahmin. I'm like, do you though? Like, do you,
Mhm.
like, have you done, like, there are two ways to look at it, right? In terms of Brahminism, either you say that if you were born in a Brahmin family and you sort of it's a matter of pride for you, then it means that you're ascribing to an idea which you kept denying all this while, that is an oppressive system, because
Mhm.
it's propagated by birth, right? But if they say that no, it's about merit, then have you read any of the Upanishads or the Vedas or anything? Does that mean that you should relinquish your surname and let somebody from say the untouchable community come up and take your surname, because it's all about merit, right? If you sort of believe in that idea.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty fuck all catch 22 for a lot of people, because it just puts you in a space where you're like whether you believe in hereditary, because then you're fucked, because then you actually believe in the idea of like quasi racism, so to speak. Or if you believe in the idea of merit, then also you're fucked, because you're not that meritorious, right? So would you give it up for somebody else?
So it's
Now,
like people want the easy answer, right? They just want the comfortable option just to be like, like I'm fine, I've not done anything wrong. Just a matter of like people don't want to question things. The question that you are asking, whatever your relatives are, don't even occur to them in their thought process. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's
but
like us,
yeah,
the people who've read more, learned more are like, oh, I mean, we should question things.
It's
But most people are just happy with the easy answers that are told to them when they were kid and they
मैं
just
बेस्ट है,
convert it to their life.
मैं बेस्ट है, मैं बेस्ट है, ये
It's
बेस्ट है, मेरा भाई बेस्ट है, मेरा कजिन बेस्ट है.
Mhm.
yeah. It's just clinging to identity without, I mean, out of ignorance, pure ignorance, and not the good kind of ignorance.
But
The really shitty, bad kind of ignorance.
the reason why, although I brought up these like obviously Falah was mentioning about Allah Hafiz and Khuda Hafiz difference, and growing the beard, and as I'm telling you, right, there's the same sort of ghettoization that I'm also seeing in last 4 or 5 years. And obviously for you there was obviously a cause, right? The cause was 9/11, or the ghettoization that happened because of 9/11,
Yeah.
right? Mostly for worse, not for better anyway. But and I'm sort of trying to figure out what is the reason why it has happened to the Hindus also, because I'm sure if like the behavior is a certain way, then there has to be some sort of a trigger. Is the trigger that a certain party got elected, or is the trigger that something got made? Is the trigger what might the trigger be for that? Because for me that's a very interesting question.
No, so see, the thing is, it's like I don't think this is fair to talk about India as like a separate thing. Okay, if you go to Pakistan, the Muslims that you see like here as minorities are doing the same thing to the Hindus over there.
For
also,
sure,
right?
for sure.
It's just a matter of
Absolutely.
people who want to control. It's like whoever controls wants to exert more and more control. Like nobody who has power is going to give up power that easily. It's always a matter of control, and that I think is the big challenge. Whoever controls wherever is the enemy.
Yeah, but like my question still stays, right? What might the trigger be? Like, because there are very clear triggers every once in a while.
The trigger is the desire to control, dude. The desire to enforce your way of life over any other way of life.
It could also be like it's a reaction, right? I mean, while victimization could have been a trigger for Muslims in India, for the Hindus in general, the way they approach their shared history or cultural history is of persecution for the longest time. And now they think they have arrived. They've arrived at the global stage. They have sort of somehow united on a political front from a vote back point of view. Ghettoization, one end, is because of entrenchment and protectionism, right? The other side is they're coming out of the woodworks, coming out of the closet. Now the that idea or that ethos is coming to the forefront, and because there are so many of them doing that now, the other insecure communities who are led are also peddling that narrative of fear. Like, these guys are now talking about themselves. We need to hold on to our haunches, and stamp our own sense of identity,
But that really
be true
comes
to
down
ourselves and stuff like that. But that is just extremely political and opportunistic.
So it's always to do with the narrative, right? It's the story we choose to tell ourselves. It's because it's the grand narrative that's been constructed. In fact, what we're seeing
Absolutely.
now is the fruition of 90 years of hard work by one organization. Like, they've built a grand narrative. And that's why I do what I do as well with my comics in Musalman as well. It's an attempt at constructing an alternate narrative. That's why in the origin story I made it a point to say that Musalman is a descendant of Ram, and his ancestors fought Mongol invaders and whatnot. It's like presenting an alternate narrative because that's the narrative of.
Yeah,
let's dive into some of those graphics, man.
Yeah,
Real fan of your illustration work. Yeah, I mean,
shout out to Artist Spud, he does that. So that's
really
the thing. It was to create a different narrative that people are not used to, and even then people got back to them in my DM saying, "Hey man, how did you think of that? That's also my story too." Because it is the story of every Indian Muslim. Because Indian Muslims have roots in Hinduism. There's no way of denying that.
Yeah.
And when I bring that up, people are like, "Hey, but that's ascribing to the RSS view." I'm like, but maybe we can agree on this one point,
Yeah, just agree and be okay with it.
Yeah, like,
dude, I had not read this one. Huh? This is fucking insane.
Go to.
Do you have there's a fantastic one by you which is called Nationalism Glasses.
The videos on there, yeah, it's on there.
Oh, so
go
anybody
now.
who's listening to this needs to really go and check out Nationalism Glasses by Musalman. There it is. It's on his page, and it's on his IGTV. I think this is the where my cursor is right now is where you can actually find it on his IGTV. It's a fucking hilarious video. It's just brilliant.
You
It's like it runs for 2.5-3 minutes, I guess. That's it.
Yeah,
And
and the Congress ripped it off. The Congress ripped it off last year during the campaign time without giving us any credit. They made
what
Bhakta
the
Chashma.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they made Bhakta Chashma, which is a Hindi rip-off of our video without giving any credit. But hey man, like I'm like the biggest opposition party in the country, feels it's worthy to rip off my shit. So
dude, it's pretty
Well,
insane. That
imitation
video
is the
is
highest form of flattery. So
that video sort of got me into the whole thing. I was like, this is fucking hilarious.
but then again, like that video, the thought comes from They Live by John Carpenter. Like I do not mind people ripping me off because I'm ripping off 10 other people. It's just that you don't know my soul. Like I'm not like a person who claims that hey, I'm the most original thinker out there. And like no dude, like I've ripped off from 10 other people. Like you might know 2 of them, but 8 other people I won't tell you. Like,
So who are your biggest influences?
yeah, I was coming to
currently,
that. Can we focus Akash on that, on the Musalman
Yeah,
graphic
for sure.
while
Yeah,
he
you
takes
can.
us through it,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it adds a lot.
yeah,
so
for sure.
currently like I would say 2 of the greatest people I draw inspiration from now, especially in the comic forum, is like Alan Moore and Grant Morrison. Grant Morrison I've just gotten into now, but
Okay.
Alan Moore has been like in fact, even if you look at the Musalman stuff, like the early few ones are kind of like me trying to write my version of V for Vendetta. It's like literally taking a scene from V for
Hmm.
Vendetta and saying like, okay, if I had to write it in my context, this is how I would do it. So I draw a lot of inspiration from Alan Moore, and now I'm getting into Grant Morrison, who's like another level of insane. I think Grant Morrison and Alan Moore are like like the good angel and the evil angel on either side of my head, always whispering into my ear. Like
What has Grant Morrison written that we know of?
Yeah, yeah.
so, Grant Morrison has written one of the most influential series that you've obviously seen its influence, but you do not know it by name. It's called The Invisibles. And the reason why you know it is because Matrix practically ripped off the whole plot. Like your whole
Oh,
main storyline of Matrix is from Invisibles, which Grant Morrison was writing in like mid 90s. Grant Morrison also has gone on to like do a lot of work in like he's written All Star Superman. Currently, he's working on a Wonder Woman story and stuff. But Invisibles is his like it's the holy grail of his writing. A lot of interesting
Nice.
ideas.
wow.
Oh,
And
interesting.
Grant Morrison is into this thing called chaos magic, which is very interesting. Where like he actually believes whatever you write, like like it manifests itself. Like he has this whole thing about sigil magic, where you write down a desire, you cancel out the repeating consonants and the repeating vowels. So you cancel out the vowels and the repeating consonants. Whatever consonants you're left with, create a sigil. Like if it's a war sigil, burn it. If it's a love sigil, like flush it down the toilet, whatever. But that's a way of performing magic that you can manifest whatever the fuck you want through
So
this thing.
like what's his thought on this? Like what does he mean by this? I mean, is he
It's
doing it out of satire, or is like it's
no. So where Morrison and Alan Moore both come from the same field, where they think art is magic. Like like any creation, whether it is word, image, or audio, is itself magic, because you're gonna like look at it and it's gonna generate thoughts and stuff. Because everything that exists right now, be it the table that we have or the laptop that we have, was first created in the human mind. So the imagination, that the thought that we must make this, and eventually created it. So they think of everything being magic.
wow. And they actually, I mean, they actually think like that. Like I mean, they actually believe in this.
Yeah, both of them are like practitioners. They both Moore and Morrison consider themselves as practicing magicians. Like
That's insane, dude. Hey, do you also try it?
I think so too, because I think I'm like because like so here's how it is, right?
It's very
So
Kabbalistic. No?
yeah, I mean like so if you read Promethea by Alan Moore, he basically deconstructs and explains every element of Kabbalah and tarot and all of that stuff through the thing. people know him from Watchmen and V for Vendetta, but I think Promethea is the work that I think people should read.
So Promethea is a non-fiction work.
No. So Promethea is based on like an Egyptian goddess of imagination and dreams, and anybody who's writing about her or drawing her can get inspired and like become Promethea. So a girl who's doing her college research on the project becomes the new Promethea and how she deals with the world and learning about her powers and stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah, I want to check
So
that out.
I mean,
That's insane.
so here's the thing, right? So even Morrison talks about this, where
Interesting.
why comics are the best form of getting an idea across is because your left side of the brain deals with like language and stuff like that, whereas the right side of the brain deals with image and like visuals and stuff like that. So when you're reading a comic, your whole brain is working together to absorb this material, right? And where I am going with this is like in my origin story, like I had PCRC lyrics drawn across the artwork, right? And whoever's heard the song, whenever they've read the comic, whether the song is playing or not, is still hearing music in their head. I can generate sound and music in people's minds based on images and words that I'm presenting. If that's not magic, then what is?
Wait, which PCRC song was that?
Love Demons, dude. In the origin story. So I mean,
Got it.
people who've heard the song are going to hear it in their head, whether or not like it's playing behind the comic. So I'm able to generate sounds in people's head, music in people's head based on like text and image that I put up.
Got it. For the ones who are not aware of who PCRC is, they're probably the greatest Indian band. One of the greatest Indian bands, I think, of our generation. It's Peter Cat Recording Company, who also is now, as some of you might actually know, now his also side project, which is Lifafa. Am I correct?
And Begum, not to mention Begum.
Oh yeah, Begum is insane. They've got this crazy video they shot in Pushkar. I remember. It's beautiful.
Also, they let me use their music for my last movie. So.
Oh yeah, you've interviewed them. I know. Yeah. So that's insane, dude.
So even Morrison talks about religion, yeah, like the whole religious experience. Why do we have gods and miracles and stuff happening 300-400 years ago, like a few thousand years ago, but not so many now? Is his explanation is that the human brain was not quite evolved. The lobe that connects the left brain to the right brain was not there, right? Hence, like when they heard voices or divine like inspiration or whatever, it was just the left side of the brain trying to communicate with the right side of the brain, and the people then were not able to comprehend that the voice in their head was basically themselves. So that's his explanation of why religions and stuff like take birth. Is basically it's the left side of the brain that trying to communicate with the right side of the brain, and people back then did not have the neural connections to comprehend it.
So he says, okay, so because they did not have that, what is
the connecting lobe?
Yeah.
The connecting lobe that connects, because we are the only species with 5 lobes, right, as opposed to 4 lobes.
Even neural pathways hadn't really developed to that extent.
Yeah, and that's why people misinterpreted these voices that were basically a part of their brain, as opposed to being an external godlike force.
Oh, okay. Did he mention why people had these voices? I know because Terence McKenna used to have a theory about this. I was reading a book the other day. I mean, like he attributed a lot of these religious ideas or religious thought to the psychedelic substances that the humans had in all the parts of the world, right? So there's a book about this. I forgot the name of the author. It literally talks about how like the genesis of most religious experience or shamanistic experience is actually just the psychedelics. And obviously you saw visions and you saw things, however you could not put them down, right? You obviously could not define them the way which probably sort of a connection with what you were saying, that we obviously experienced them, but did we have the ability to sort of sort of write it down? And what that might have led to is like a cycle of experiences that like a lot of people wanted to have. So that becomes like what you would call a ritual, right? Because not everybody can sort of list it down So everybody's trying to have it in the first person, and that's how the rituals in most religions came into being. That's why you have those that trance-like dancing in Sufism, right? That's why you have
Mhm.
ayahuasca. That's why you have all
That's
those.
exactly why in Musalman's origin story I make him do acid, because like he has to do acid in order to find his history over time. So I think psychedelics are very important. I think I ascribe them to every human being.
Yeah, absolutely. So do we. I
And
mean,
if you can't, then read Alan Moore or Grant Morrison. If you can't do them yourself, because even Alan Moore and Grant Morrison talk about this thing, right? Like in Genesis, it opens with "In the beginning there was the Word." So words are these things that have trapped our experiences. Everything we go through, we try to put into words, right? So, and in the last 200-300 years, 2,000 3,000 years, words has been supreme. Be it your constitution, be it a religious text, be it like penal codes. It's all about words and how you choose to interpret those.
yeah, it's called the
So it's
logos, right? The logos.
yeah.
The I think the Western civilization is sort of based on the idea of logos.
So recently, I was reading an interview by Grant Morrison because he was promoting his new show called Brave New World that had just come out, and he had this interesting analogy about how so if you put time in the frame of Egyptian gods from Jesus' birth until about now was the age of Osiris. Osiris is the risen god who died and came back to life a lot like Jesus, has a lot of parallels. But what we are moving into now is the age of Horus. Like, so everything that was considered sacred during the time of Osiris is going to be questioned, toned down, and called into question, is
Isn't
what he was
isn't
talking
isn't
about.
Horus one of the sons of Osiris?
Yeah. So Horus and Maat, who are the two siblings. So we're moving into the age of Horus and Maat from the age of Osiris. And the age of Maat also like goes around like, all these people who didn't have a voice during the Osiris age are going to get a voice. And their narratives come through. And that I can see on my social media. So many people who are LGBT, who are non-binary, whatever, like, whatever little like small community that you come from, now you have a say. You can get out there and you can tell your story. And how he puts it into context is when coronavirus happened, when it began, all the old gods' places, be that temples, churches, or mosques, were all shut down, were all empty. What better way to represent the transition of power than the old god ka ghar khali? Like,
Yeah, dude, that's insane.
So,
That's also very Neil Gaiman, right? Like going
yeah.
from the old gods to the new gods. It's a very
I don't know why I have this like affinity towards like weird British men, I guess. Like
yeah.
whether it's Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, Grant Morrison,
Yeah, this
or the
is
music that we listen to.
this is literally the idea of American gods, right? The old gods
Mhm,
versus the
mhm,
new gods. I mean, that's literally
mhm.
what's happening. And yeah, it's it's crazy actually. I actually got to
So
check out
we're
Grant
heading
Morrison.
into this period where like a lot of the things that were held sacred were are going to be questioned. For example, for example, people bring this up, like when somebody asks me, "Are you a communist or something?" I will tell you a longer story later, but I'm like, "No, man, I'm an anarchist." So they're like, "You don't believe in the constitution, the freedom of speech that guarantees you?" I'm like, "Who is the constitution to give me freedom of speech? I give myself freedom of speech. It's what I want to say, and I say it anyways. What does a document that was written 70 years ago have anything to do with what I want to say now or not?" Sure, it protects me or whatever, but freedom of speech is inherent in everybody. I don't think a document or a book can give you the right.
Yeah, I think. What does a document do then?
It ensures you from being persecuted over it, but
Yeah,
well, clearly the words don't matter anymore. Like,
not anymore. Not
an
to the
Arnab
people.
can go to jail and come back in 8 days when he's actually abated suicide, whereas like an Umar Khalid is lying in jail for 3 months when
Yeah,
he's
yeah, yeah.
actually talking about uniting the country.
And
So
who was the other gentleman who's been in jail for exposing the UP government? Kanojia, right?
yeah, I mean he exposed the food thing, right?
Yes, he
So the
exposed
kids
the
getting food
yes,
poisoning.
yes, 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 which is crazy. Okay, by the way, this is running like a bit longer, so we're gonna have to sort of uh, cut the episode short and come back again on the same link.
Cool.
Yeah.
But before we cut off, like I mean, try and conclude. What do you want to like finally
I
talk
don't have to
about?
conclude anything, honestly. We're just chilling.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool,
yeah.
cool, cool.
What do you? I'm not
So
interviewing.
thank.
This is a podcast. We don't have to
No,
conclude
we can.
shit.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
No, but I'm just saying, what more do we want to talk about? That's just like
What more do we want to do? Let's figure it out and then end it. Yeah.
Cool.
And we are back.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking about the constitution and you being obviously anarchist about it.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if I should like keep this information a little. I don't know if I should say it, but I was arrested earlier this year, like
I know
on
that.
my way back to Nagpur.
I know
And
that
that happened
you were
while I
arrested when I
was
met you, right?
interrogated. Yeah. Huh?
Just after I met you. Just before I met you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, so when they were interrogating me, they kept asking me, "Are you communist?" And I was like, "No, I'm an anarchist." And my luck would have it that the cops did not know what the word anarchy means. They're like, "Beta, anarchy kya hai?" And I'm like, "Anarchy, anarchy." No, anarchy. तुम बोल रहे थे ना anarchist. I'm like, "No, not anarchist, anarchist." Like, so that's why it came into question. They're like, so you do not believe in the constitution that guarantees freedom of speech. And I'm like, I mean, who's the constitution to give me freedom of speech? It is a great thought, but I don't think human expression should be limited.
It's almost never limited by any document. I mean, documents are good and they're a good sort of a safeguard, but I don't think it's ever. I mean, things happen like, and the fact that a lot of stuff gets written in countries and in places where stuff gets written. Wow, what was that?
Oh, that's a conch
There was a conch.
in the background. Yeah, there's a temple across the lake, and
Oh yeah, of course.
this is the evening puja, and there's a conch.
Yeah. So one of the things was that the fact that a lot of countries where there was no guaranteed freedom of expression actually also had some of the great literature coming out from an underground source. So the expression can never sort of be
like a lot of Russian literature for that.
samizdat, right? Like there's a concept in Russia literally called samizdat where you self-publish your books and they sort of get circulated underground. And one of the great books from that era which came out was called The Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn, right? Which was like an underground circulated book. And it was pretty crazy how it almost sort of led to an exposure of the USSR when it was released in the West, but it was almost never released in that country itself. So I see your point there, like how constitution, no matter how bulletproof, so to speak, can never be the substitute for the tendency to
It's not possible. If you're an enforcer in charge of the state, and it's your job to ensure that there is peace and calm, it's just not possible to guarantee full freedom of expression. And that's the inherent conflict always, right? Artistic expression is inherently anarchist. And one of the reasons why the early Catholic Church, I mean, the schools, especially in Europe, they banned humor because they assumed that the fact that you can actually laugh also means that you can actually laugh at the expense of God. And that also in a way challenges authority inherently. And whether it's humor by way of satire or direct slapstick humor, it's a threat. And they actually I mean, Umberto Eco's book, the name of the rose, it stars Sean Connery, may he rest in peace now. But the whole plot actually revolved around the fact that Aristotle's Poetics was actually a lost document, but was actually preserved in an ancient Christian monastery. And the reason it was preserved was because the church looked at humor as a threat in general, and that has always been the case, right? I mean, the vehicle of anarchy or the vehicle of destabilization has always been satire in most places. And that is dangerous because you can't really control it, because you have people laughing, but at the same time, it's
also like
something that is,
should we be
the
laughing
message
at
is,
this?
yeah, the message is already being conveyed. Like, for example, if Louis C.K. gets a crowd laughing on a pedophilic joke,
Yeah.
but then they sort of hold themselves back, and then he's already got them in on the joke. He's like, hey, you're in on this joke with me now.
Yeah.
I've dragged you down the depths with me now. Don't start crucifying me. You're in this with me.
Yeah.
That is extremely dangerous. That is ultimately extremely dangerous. So that's why, I mean, Musalman has always like sort of fascinated me. and even your views on Parsai, right, in general, because satire is
Mm,
something that destabilizes inherently. Even if you have a laugh at the expense of the customs officials, right, in
mm.
that in an anecdote that you have shared in the write-up,
Yeah.
if you want to throw some light on it,
Yeah,
that may
so
have been the Indian tradition, but that has never been that has been the Indian tradition when there was never really an overarching document guaranteeing rights and stuff, right?
and even before that, because I think like natak, that nukkad natak has been like in
Yeah.
Indian tradition for way longer. Like, I think even in Diwali time as well, when you do the Ram Leela, it's a
Hmm.
humorous take sometimes. Like, it's never like, I mean, I've always had like a preference for the profane. Like, if something is sacred, I have to make fun of it. It's kind of how I've been wired. And if you believe in God, then God is making me do it. So, like, fight for him.
There's a very
Yeah,
famous
man.
Ricky Gervais quote about this. If there is a God,
Yeah,
why did he make me an atheist?
exactly. Or even I was
God
watching this
must have.
Kabir documentary, right? And there's this guy called I don't remember his name, but he's a singer. He sings Sufi songs, and his interpretation is like, if God was against music, why would he create singers and musicians? Like, for what purpose would it serve? Like,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
but coming back to Parsai, like Parsai, I found out very interestingly. Like, I'd not known about Parsai until I was traveling in UP in like about 2017. I think from the PF money that I got from the TVF job. I think like the money that I saved up. But
I just want to take this opportunity to tell people how Falah quit TVF. Falah was like a part of this team called the Timeliners in TVF, and he was in a WhatsApp group with obviously like everybody. And one fine day, obviously Falah comes to me and says like, I've quit and this is my last day and all. We shake hands and all. I'm see you around whenever we see you. And he leaves. Then suddenly somebody comes and tells me, dude, Falah left or what? I'm like, yeah, why? He just wrote on the WhatsApp group that, hey guys, good luck making relatable tutty content. I don't want to see it ever again. I'm out. And I was like, dude, that's gonna take some balls because whenever people are leaving a company, they usually like, I don't want to burn my bridges and I just want to be like nice to everybody so that I get a job again. This guy
no,
just sort
man,
of gave a
I
middle
think the
finger.
bridges you burn light the way ahead.
I would like
Yeah.
to think so. Yeah,
There's no turning back now. Yeah.
I'm in the process of burning a few bridges at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, but so I was traveling in UP and I went to Lucknow, Faizabad, Ayodhya, Gorakhpur, Banaras, and I traveled this whole trip in under 10K because like all I had to do was show up to the people there and be like, hey, I'm part of the resistance too, and they fed me, housed me, everything was
Oh
sorted.
wow.
That's insane.
And yeah,
That's
and
interesting.
when I was in Faizabad is when I met this guy called Aakash who runs schools in villages and stuff. And he made me meet a bunch of interesting people there, being like, and that's how I found out about Parsai because I met a Hindi literature professor from Faizabad University. He was telling me this. And funnily, the person I met, Joe Sacco, also met him when Joe Sacco came to India to write about the Kushinagar comic. Like if you've read Joe Sacco's work.
I've heard of Joe Sacco's work. I've not read any of.
So he does comic journalism. He basically visits war-torn or troubled areas, and he then comes back and writes comics as opposed to write an article about what his experiences are. So
Wow.
this Hindi professor dude who'd met even Joe Sacco met him when he came to India, told me about Parsai and all these stories, and I was just going to like, man, people tell me people are not like the audience is not ready for my humor, but I'm like, fuck, this humor's existed always. There's never been a time where this sort of humor is not there. Even if it wasn't for me, I mean, I've heard this show a lot called Flop Show. I'm probably too young to remember it,
You not
but
watched it?
I've not watched it. I'm
You
probably too
should. You
young
should
to have seen it. But
absolutely
like,
drop everything and watch Flop Show. It's all available online. There are probably only 12 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. And
mhm,
you like a lot of times, and I'm sort of, I know I'm cutting you short, but it has to be spoken about because a lot of times, a lot of stuff that was really fun when you were a child and it doesn't age well, obviously, when you sort of grow up, right?
mhm,
Flop Show is not like that at all. That means it was
mhm,
made with taste and integrity. It's almost like classic
mhm.
rock. It was fun then, it's fun now too, right?
Yeah.
Flop Show is sort of like that. It was fun then because it was made with so much precision that even if you watch it now, you would just be laughing because and it's clever. It's clever as fuck. It's just. I mean, I keep it to myself mostly, but there are parts of Flop Show which are so freaking relevant that you just look at them and you're like, fuck, this is still happening.
because problems don't change. We don't fix
Bureaucracy
things.
hasn't changed in India. If the nature of
Yeah.
Indian bureaucracy were to change completely, the show would become irrelevant to you. But the show was
Exactly.
made in the 1989, right? And it just ran for a very short time. But dude, like that dude was spot on. Jaspal Bhatti was bang on. The acting is very mild. It's chill. It's
Mhm.
light-hearted. But otherwise, it's just like it's you gotta check it out, man. It's insane. The
Yeah.
the storylines are brilliant.
So, I mean, even coming back to Parsai, what Parsai used to do was make fun of the government, but in the context of Mahabharata and Ramayana stories. Like I mentioned, like there's another story which blew my mind because I'm like, so it's the war veterans who fought in Ram's war, all the monkeys who are war veterans who are jobless now petitioning Ram to like do something for us. Like, we won your war for you. That sort of humor, man. Like, and it's existed. It's not that hasn't been there. And I feel like if Parsai was taken and made Monty Python sketches of, it would create like
Yeah,
havoc.
yeah,
Like,
it would.
Oh man, that would be all over the place, man. That would be awesome.
yeah, because like I
Yeah,
was
but
reading Parsai recently, right? Like I was reading
Hmm,
Parsai's essays from 84, 85, and he writes,
okay.
and the first essay is saying BJP ka natak, BJP ka nangar naach, or whatever that shit is. It's like BJP in the 80s also was like if they sold tickets for the drama that went on within the party, they can election fund for the next few campaigns. That's what Parsai starts with. And what he says is ki, like we remember the 84 riots, right? Like the Sikh riots of 84, but and we know that it was happened because Indira Gandhi attacked Operation the Golden
Operation Blue
Temple,
Star, yeah.
Operation Blue Star. But guess who campaigned for 6 months before Operation Blue Star happened? Atal Bihari Vajpayee and LK Advani took out rallies in Delhi saying attack the Golden Temple, attack the Golden Temple. And when the Golden Temple was attacked, they showed up going, oh, look at Indira Gandhi, such a terrible person. How could she do this? Like Operation Blue Star was almost a trap laid for Indira Gandhi. Like they created this whole narrative saying that Khalistan is against India, whatever, attack them, attack them, attack them. The moment she did, she just fell into that trap. So when
That's
we look at
radical.
Sikh
I did
riots,
not
we
know
see
that.
it in context. It's
I did
it's
not
there
know
in
that either.
Parsai's essays.
Very
I'll
interesting.
share the essay with you. As basically Advani and I actually googled this. I tried to find whether this was legit, and I found a couple of like links from Sikh websites who actually have documentation of the kind of statements Vajpayee and Advani made leading up to the 84 riots. And we don't talk about this because right now we're like, oh, it was a Congress orchestrated thing, but it was actually manufactured and created by you know who. So,
You know
Wow.
who.
So that I mean, that just brings you to the question, right? I mean, what is the state of satire right now in India? Because
uh,
Akash and I have been talking about this quite a bit, and we kind of find the current Indian humor scene sort of bankrupt, and the people who are probably making waves on the ground are not, and then they've not got the voice that they probably deserve. But the ones who are actually
I
ruling the mic right now,
I don't know, man. I
they
think
have nothing to say actually.
I get a lot of my whatever humor out of like what Insta stories and Insta reels. I think that's a fantastic spurt of humor. Like people from all walks of life. I think I should not be saying this, but over the lockdown phase, I've realized that women are funny dudes. Like so many funny female creators. Like
Who are the favorite ones?
I
Yeah,
mean,
please.
right now, I would say there's this one account called Ragini Anand. She does a lot of like political stuff. There's Isha Bahel who does a lot of law-related stuff. There's another girl called Apurva who not a, her Insta handle is called Awkward Goat. She does a lot of mental health related humor stuff. So I mean, there's a spurt of
There's
humor
there's
happening in
obviously
your.
Nazma Api.
Oh yeah, and she got her own TV show by the way.
Oh, really?
Like
She did?
and Prem and Jizzy are working on
Oh, good for them, man. Geez.
it.
So for Prem and Jizzy are like our colleagues from TVF. Great
Yeah,
guys.
so
Yeah.
so there's a spurt of humor, but when you ask what's the current state of satire, I'm a little afraid because I write fiction and then it becomes reality. For example, your Arnab's drug dose speech, I wrote it 2 months before it happened. Like, so I'm scared because no matter what satire you might write, it might turn out into like reality sooner rather than later. Because as a storyteller, I read patterns, okay, and I
Hmm.
see a lot of scary patterns happening. For example, so 92 there were riots, 2002 there were riots, 2012 there was Muzaffarnagar and stuff and that. I'm just scared of 2022. I mean, if your people are like saying 2020 is a bad year, 2022, I do not know what's going to happen if you see the pattern in that sense. So, like,
That's very interesting. Hmm.
I
Fuck.
mean, 2020 is the year 2012 hoped it was, but like,
Yeah, dude, absolutely. I mean, everybody was like, yeah, nothing's gonna happen. Yeah, I think the Mayans sort of missed like a 1 or 2 or whatever. I mean, sort of.
no,
Should have
but
been.
so have I told you about the Uranus theory, dude?
No. Let's wrap it up with
So,
that. Yeah.
yeah, obviously, because this is a story I really fucking need to go out there because so I have a friend called Marcus who studies like he's an astrologer by interest, not that he's like studied or certified. He's an interest in astrology, and this is something he told us around about 2018 is where so Uranus takes about 84 years to go around the solar system and come back around. It spends about 7 years in every uh, constellation, and now Uranus is back in Taurus. And Uranus in Taurus is what was happening when Hitler was rising, fascism was rising. Uranus was in Taurus. So Uranus is back in the same position where it used to be. And all this is Uranus's fault. Like, it's because Uranus is in this particular position. And if you actually look back an 84-year pattern, so 84 years back from now was World War II. 84 years before that was Indian Revolution and whatnot. 84 years before that was American War of Freedom, whatever. So every 80, 84 years, there's
Uh,
a cycle of revolution and change. And it's because Uranus comes into this particular position.
Why are you being so disrespectful towards Bolsonaro?
Huh?
Why are you being so disrespectful against Bolsonaro,
What is that?
the Brazilian
I mean,
president?
oh,
Like, I mean, you cannot call him fascist just like that, dude. It's just like that's wrong.
yeah. I mean, because so even when you look at Uranus's characteristics, it's the planet of revolution and change.
yeah.
So I mean, even though it might be going through like terrible times right now, it eventually leads to a successful or a
Yeah, absolutely.
successful
After
It's a
revolution.
every
paradigm change. It's a change of paradigm, basically.
Exactly. And
That's what it is.
so what Marcus's interpretation is that it takes 7 years. It came into this position about 2018. So until 2025, things are going to get progressively worse until there's even a glimmer of hope. But
hey man,
Taurus
thanks.
is a Taurus is a
so
bull.
so
Taurus
I'm
is a
just like
bitch.
fortune telling.
It's a
Yeah.
bovine. It's a
Taurus is a
bovine
fucking
creature.
bitch, dude.
These bulls and cows, I tell you.
Shit, dude.
Oh,
This is legit fucked up, dude.
this
Like
is so
this is
cool.
like
This 84-year pattern.
it's also called
You want to trace
84.
it
Huh?
back, huh? Let's.
Like if you keep, I mean,
Oh,
if you,
Jesus.
but that's the thing with any theory, you can always force fit facts, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
It's like the
Yeah, patterns.
even odd theory
Retrospectively. Yeah.
for IPL and shit, right? I get that. It's
yeah,
like all
but then that's the thing. So ever since I found out about the Uranus thing, I started like, okay, now I know that's revolution and change time. Let me capitalize on it. And a lot of good work has happened since I found out that Uranus is the reason.
maybe
Like I'm
we'll go
trying to
into some sort of
harness the
like a
power.
7 year revolution or some shit like that and come back with like
Mhm.
an amended constitution which guarantees more rights to people, like a first amendment sort of a thing in India. But
See, I do not. So, I mean, I hope this is not sedition according to them, but I feel India as a landmass is too big to manage by the same laws. I
I'm not
like.
sure.
Mhm.
No, I'm not sure about that. And like I know what you're saying. Obviously,
It's
with
a
this,
bar too diverse a place where like you
see,
can't apply the same rules and laws to everybody because it's
this is
really.
yeah. I know what you're saying, and I know it's a very tempting idea and a theory. But I and Sandeep often talk about it.
Mhm.
How it might it is obviously diverse, right? Again, in terms of how people perceive things. But then there is obviously an undercurrent of things which are consistent across the land, which
Mhm.
has always like I remember when Sandeep went to Kedarnath, if I'm not mistaken, and he was telling me about the stories from there, which actually also include like mythological stories, which actually include the southern parts of India, and right, and
Mhm.
everything sort of adds up, right? Like if you go to an ancient epic from India, for example, they will have a description of everything. A Hindu epic will not just be like centralized around, say, the Gangetic plain. It'll start in Ayodhya. It'll go to Nasik, obviously, because Nasik has the place where Sita ji was in that house with Ram. That's where the jungle was. It also then goes to Hampi, and then it goes to also the. So what I'm saying is, the story of a country, if you were to sort of do it in a very, very loose way, has been very, very consistent in no matter how many ways you look at it. Even say A.K. Ramanujan, when he looks at like 300 versions of Ramayana, at the end of the day, those versions are just little sparks going everywhere, but the core story in a way stays the same. And so I think we have too much of mythological or civilizational consistency right now to sort of to ever disintegrate, because dude, it's a very strong story like the Indian subcontinent. And one of the things we actually talk about is actually quite the opposite. We think the landmass is not enough. We were talking about Pakistan this morning. We were talking about Pakistan this morning. And it's not so much Akhand Bharat Zindabad. Like I don't give two shits about Akhand Bharat, to be honest. We also have a friend who's Akhand Bharat, who runs a channel, who's a great friend. Check him out, he's fantastic. But when I say, in the sense that the civilizational undercurrent is the same from probably a Kandhar to a Dhaka. It's like a same set of ideas, which sort of, the moment you go into a territory like China and all, it completely changes. Everything is different. The race is different, the culture is different, the food, but in this landmass, it's just all the same. And we're talking Pakistan because we're researching Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan for a video that we're going to be doing. Dude, like the more you read about Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan's ancestors and everything, you actually keep looking at that man was singing in Bhojpuri and Brij Bhasha, which is literally your Mathura and all these languages. You cannot just Pakistan is not really a country that's in that sense, right? It doesn't have that civilizational fulcrum, so to speak. Afghanistan is more independent as a culture than Pakistan can ever be. Persia is definitely a different culture altogether. But I do think that from the northwest frontier of Pakistan to pretty much Dhaka is like this one culture. No matter how much, I mean, dude, you go to Sri Lanka,
Dhaka, even beyond Dhaka, even beyond Dhaka, some parts of Burma as well.
And this is not some sort of like a Prussian way of looking at the expansion of your country's empire. I am just talking in a pure civilizational sense. Like you go to Sri Lanka, dude, like at least till half of Sri Lanka. I'm not talking about the lower Sri Lanka, like places like Galle and all, where very different from the rest of the world. But at least the northern half of Sri Lanka is just it's very similar. You can just get by there and just not feel out of place at all. And these are the things. These are very soft things, but you just realize how much the culture has been, like, literally till 2000 years ago. Also, the kings who were residing in Sri Lanka were mostly sort of coming from India and sort of bringing that culture from India, right? So it's like a same story, man. I think India is not too big to manage. India is sort of trying to, as you very rightly said in the beginning, India is becoming too Abrahamic for its own good to manage itself. Like,
and also like there are interests that are like wanting to divide us, because like, I mean, there's another way of like, so another Alan Moore thing from Prometheus, what he says is what he says, that we are just the hands and the eyes and the mouth, we are the sensory organs of the universe. Like we are manifested so that the universe can experience itself. So we are all part of one large whole. Like that's the opposite way of going at it. If you're saying we divide, then I'm saying, like, we are part of one large fucking whole. You can't. And probably residing in Uranus, but like one large. No, but we are all one thing at the end of the day, because like, man, my music taste and like my reading, what I watch is probably more Western than most Western people. I think I've read more Kerouac than any American kid growing up now has.
Absolutely.
So where does this nationality idea come in? Music I listen to is from there, from like England. The books I read, the movies I watch are from America or from Australia. So I'm like, I don't think this nationality of breaking it down into geography makes much sense to me.
Absolutely. It's almost like the opposite of American-born confused. He's like Indian-born confused Angrez. Like that's what we all are. All three of us are that, right? Like there's Sandeep who's like a hardcore Umberto Eco fan. I'm like a Borges fan. It's not even. It's like fucking South America. Like my biggest inspirations are Radiohead and Jorge Luis Borges and all these people. and Massive Attack. They're all British guys, and I fucking hate the Brits, right? Like hate their guts for invading us. But what
they
am I going?
created all the schools we studied in, didn't they? Like my school was founded in 1865 by some Brits, and that system of education is like
I went to a shithole school. Okay, so my school was created by a bunch of very corrupt people. It's a government school. Nothing happened there. Nothing. We don't even have a library. Okay, I'm not gonna go there. But
what school did you go to, Sandeep?
Fatima, right?
Oh, I went to Fatima High School in Bombay. Yeah, in Bombay. No, it's pretty decent. Which one did you go to? Which one are you talking
Me,
about?
I went to Bishop Cotton Boys School in Bangalore.
Oh, Bishop Cotton. Yeah. So it's
So
not at that level, no.
it's at I mean I studied ICSE, and pretty much like that gave me the foundation to go on and do whatever else. Like
The only thing that gave me the foundation was
Yeah, we and I are from the skateboard.
okay,
Yeah, yeah.
so that
we had a
We pretty
we
much
had a,
taught ourselves.
yeah, we had a library where the librarian would yell at us for coming in if we wanted a book. It was like literally this big. Like it had less books than my library right now, which I have curated. So that's how fucked up it was in my school. It was just bad, dude. It was just fucking bad.
My
They took all
school
the
had
money.
like 4 grounds, 5 gates. Like it was like kind of like going to Hogwarts. It's kind of like how my school was, like old architecture, whatever.
Yeah, it's a heritage building actually.
So,
So
I mean, like,
even my school had all the trappings of a simple convent in many ways. So the big grounds, you can play hockey, football, basketball courts, typical stuff. Nice, beautiful church. Which is why actually when Aakash was actually talking about priests, I have a very different picture of the priests. I have a very different picture of the fathers because they were very different. They were actually very nice to us.
Yeah,
But then
absolutely.
eventually one of them got embroiled in a controversy. That's a different story. But then yeah, I mean it's just one of those things.
My school
But
robbed
I
me
mean
of my
culture,
childhood.
right? I mean no, we were like we basically taught ourselves because of the internet and books in general. I don't think
honestly.
I mean,
state board
anything
had
on
anything to do with it, really, honestly.
like I think my atheism started when Wikipedia came into my life, dude. Like when Wikipedia had like every information in the world presented to you, and then you could like make a judgment call by yourself.
My atheism started because of Salman Rushdie and Christopher Hitchens. Literally, like that's where it was. That's where I was in 2010, 2008, whatever it was. And yeah. Anyway, that sounds as good. Atheism sounds like a good place to.
I think I'm actually moved beyond atheism, and I've moved on to like paganism. Like I take time out, and if I see the sun out, I go sit and respect the sun. If I see the moon out, I go pay my respect. I'm like, I think
a lot of us
there
are
is
sort
a
of
higher
there.
power. I just do not ascribe to the religious words, the major religions, but I think so because like it all comes down to ritual. It's like in the sense that like this year is the first time in 12 years that I fasted, and for the fuck of it, like not because like I've discovered religion or anything, but like over the month of fasting and whatnot, towards the last 10 days of Ramzan, which is considered a holy period because it's when the Quran was completed, is when I got when the major storyline of Musalman fell into my head. Was out of this whole aspect of depriving myself of food and whatnot, is when the storyline just opened up to me, and like the whole everything that I've been writing right now is stuff that came to me during this whole time that I was fasting.
So your fasting had something to do with like the inspiration is what you're saying. And I'm not saying in a strictly spiritual sense.
Yeah, I mean depriving your body of a certain nutrients, whatever, like focusing your stuff and like whatever, like so it's ritual is ritual. Whether you do it, you're gonna get the benefit of it. Whether like your intention is the same or not is like a matter of debate. Like
we should actually do a podcast just on rituals actually one of these days. Yeah, I'd like to talk about that. And there's a bunch of things we did not cover in today's podcast, which I would like to take up next time around. One
like
of them
what?
was like Joseph Campbell, like our mutual.
Fire.
No, there's no rapid fire. Fuck that, dude. We can actually talk for as long as we want next week also.
Yeah.
But there's stuff like, like there are other ideas that you've obviously always shared with me. There's something I wanted to discuss. I wanted to obviously discuss like the talk show hosts and how they sort of polarize people, and how India does not really have that much of a left wing and a right wing. Everybody's like a chutia. And a bunch of other things, obviously. But we will do that, I think, next time around.
Yeah.
And let's do.
Because I'm also getting calls from my dad to come and have dinner. What he
I'm getting
paid
calls
for
from
all
my
that.
family. Yeah. I haven't had anything actually. Talk about fasting. I haven't had a morsel since morning. I've just had black coffee.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Well,
uh,
last thing, can I say this whole? Since you brought up coffee, you know, India was colonized because of tea, right?
because of
Tea.
it was colonized for many
Tea.
reasons, not just tea.
No, there were a
No,
lot of
so
other
I
reasons,
mean,
right? There was
there was this video I saw. I mean, let me just finish it because we're running out of time. I just want to like make this like point is where. So I mean, in the 1600s and stuff, China was the only place that was making tea,
I know what
and
you're
they were
saying.
the
Yeah.
only people selling it from like two ports. Now your Britishers and stuff, once like tea reached there, they really wanted tea, but China wanted silver in return, and they didn't have enough silver, so they decided to get them hooked on opium.
yeah.
That's the
So
opium wars, right? Yeah.
they deindustrialized Bengal to grow opium, and then
Yeah.
there was this white man who I don't remember his name, but he deserves a movie of his own, where he went undercover as a Chinese person, went into China, kidnapped tea planters, kidnapped tea planters, stole tea plants, brought them to Assam, and Assam was the first place outside China where tea was grown, and it like one of the primary motivations for colonization of India was tea, and it's ironic that we have a chaiwala as a PM who's selling religion, which is opium. So it kind of all like
It's
That's beautiful.
the
all
grand
set up.
narrative has
That's that's
come a full circle.
that's insane, dude. I'm
Tea
just
and
glad I
opium.
finished that. All right, guys.
That's
Thank you,
awesome.
thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks, Falah, for dropping by, man. And this
Real
is
fun, man.
Falah slash Musalman. Just can you just spell it out for everybody?
Musalman 666. That's my Instagram handle.
Yeah, Musalman. And we would obviously put the link in the description for anybody who wants to check him out. And please go check him out. Please support him on Patreon. I know I haven't done that yet, but I'm gonna do it very soon.
I take
So,
GPay also. Like you can GPay me. I have no
yeah,
fucking qualms about
yeah, yeah. All
taking you
right.
out on that.
I guys, go support Falah, and we'll be back very soon with another podcast. Thank you so much, man, for doing it. Appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thanks so much,
Happy
fella.
Diwali, Children's Day, whatever.
Happy
Yeah,
Diwali,
happy
man.
Diwali to you as well.
Happy Diwali, man.
Cool. See you.
See ya. Bye.